Ambasador Izraela i njegova supruga upravo su se vratili iz Izraela gdje su proveli uskršnje praznike. To je bio Passover. Taj praznik ima veoma mnogo sličnosti sa našim Uskrsom. Ja ih pitam kako je bilo, da su videli porodicu, kako su se proveli i šta je zapravo njihov običaj. You just came back from Passover, right? How it was? Tell me.
Well, it was great to be home. It was great to be home with family. We were not allowed to celebrate last year with our families, just in the core families, which was very nice, but this year it was much nicer. Good weather, good vibe. Israel is coming out of the corona and very nice holiday.
Tell me, what did you obey during the Passover festivities? Because it still was a kind of a closed, lockdown or something. Did you manage to organize the meetings with the family, obeying all the rules?
Yes, right now actually in Israel they they opened the abilities of meeting family members, not like a year ago that we had to just celebrating with our small members of the family. So this year it was much better after the vaccine that everyone got. It was a better time than a year ago.
It was a kind of an atmosphere and the family gathering like we do here. It was the same. So all the family gets together, and usually it's a kind of a rapport between the families, what happened in the last year, etc. What they say that you are serving now in Serbia?
Everyone were really interesting about our life here. For us, as diplomats, they know our life. It's not new, but they wanted to know about special things about Serbia, how life is like that, like now in the Corona time. So we came and they can talk to us face to face because we used to a Zoom meeting and not face-to-face meetings during that year.
It is very interesting because all world is looking to Israel. How Israel did manage to cope with the virus, with Corona? Because don't forget that the mentality of Serbs and there in Israelis is similar. They don't obey so much. How did you manage to put them under the strong obeying instructions? How did you manage? What did you do?
Well, first I think we need to be modest. It's not now, of course, all the world is looking about the success story of Israel with vaccine, which is true. But like many other, practically every other government, we were not successful all the time. Every government dealt with the corona in a little bit different ways. Some decisions were taken in Israel, I think, quicker than in other parts of the world, which was very important to make very quick decisions. For example, closing the borders. Israel is like an island state. Once you close the airport, which is much easier comparing to Serbia, for example, that you have land borders with so many countries, it's very difficult to control. In terms of forcing the lockdowns, we were successful in the first round, exactly a year ago, March, April of last year, the beginning. Not as successful down the road with the second and third lockdowns. We had quite a few lockdowns in Israel, way more days of lockdown, no schools, no working places than in Serbia. Serbia kept the economy, I think, way more open than Israel. Now, of course, with this operation, as we call it, back to life with vaccines, it was very successful. I think part of it because people are fed up. And this is something I still don't see in Serbia, maybe. In Israel, people went to get vaccines because they were fed up with everything. They really wanted to do everything possible to get back to life.
Was there any hesitation to take the vaccine or not? Did you talk to your family, to your friends in Israel?
From our point of view, we didn't hesitate to get the vaccine because, as Yahel said, we just want to. We are rational people, and we understand that back to life. It's in this moment it's in our hand. So there wasn't any hesitation or something about taking or not taking it. It was, for us, it was obvious.
I think on the contrary, we called our families, especially our parents, the elderly people, we told them, have you got it yet? And everyone, at least in our circles, were really pushing first the old generation, the parents, and then of course other family members, go and get it as quickly as you can.
Your family? Did you have any hesitation in your family?
No.
No?
Not
It was
at all.
just clear?
Yeah, it was very, very clear. Both of my parents got it right away. They are on their 70s, and they are they think that is the most important thing right now. It's to get the vaccine and to get out from the situation that all the world is right now.
Was the decision completely free? Was there any pressure or seducing people? Was it a must that you have to do it in Israel?
No, not at all. I think like any other country, there were few public debates whether to which extent you can put even pressure on people. For example, there was the issue with teachers, because in order to reopen the education system, it was obvious that teachers should get vaccines, and when some said, well, from personal reason we don't want, so there was some public debate to which extent government, Ministry of Education, the municipalities can force teachers. But all in all, not really. I mean, people, again, the system in Israel was very efficient because we have a very strong public health system, and also by law, everyone in Israel has health insurance. We have 4 health insurance companies. Everything is very computerized and digitized, so they know exactly who is where and how to get to people. So even here, for example, when you open the bottles, each one has, I think, 5 or 6 doses. You must finish it on the same night. You cannot keep it open. So even here to Belgrade, I used to get SMSs from my health insurance clinic in Jerusalem. Please, whoever in that region, we have some open. Come if you can tonight, please come and take your vaccine. And people obeyed. So, at the beginning it was by age, over 60, over 70. But then when they offered to other people, most of the people really ran quite quickly to get the vaccines. There was no real need to put pressure on people.
What was your experience talking to people?
It's the same thing. Like I also got those messages, and I used to send to my friends, please go get vaccine, go to that clinic, it's available right now. It was like that. So it's as he said, we stayed in Serbia, but we were part of the whole thing in Israel.
Did you have any kind of anti-vaccine speeches or anything?
Very, very minimal. Of course, like any other country, there were a few voices, but they didn't get much influence or much media coverage. I think it was insignificant. There was not a big movement of anti-vaccines in Israel. No, celebs or anyone. I think the mass majority, of course, headed by the government and by leading doctors. I think that one of the good things in Israel that those who were leading the campaign of calling people to come and get vaccines were mostly doctors, which of course gets across much more, reliable when they tell people go and get your vaccines. And of course, our Prime Minister was the first one to get the vaccine, so they gave, this kind of personal example for people to go and get it.
Did you had any hesitation about children to give it or not to give it, as a mother, of course?
Yeah. We have four children, three of them are with us here. The 17 years old, in the moment that it was available for him to get the vaccine, we registered him to get the vaccine. There wasn't any hesitation about that. And we have also children 7 and 10 that it's not relevant in that age in this moment. And for the 20 years old that is now in the military service is getting it in the army as everyone. So that's the way that it was in our case.
In Israel, we give vaccines for kids over 16. Here in Serbia, it's over 18, but in Israel, we are giving from everyone who is 16, and now there is discussion with Pfizer and with the FDA to get the approval from age 12 to 16. So hopefully in the next few weeks, the idea is also to give vaccines for kids over 12 once it will be approved by the FDA in the US.
What do you think when Israel is going to declare that they are virus-free or something like that? Do you think that Israel is going to be the first country which is going to declare that? What you're feeling? What are the facts you have?
Well, practically, I think we are quite virus-free. I mean, even last week, the education system is back to normal. No more capsules. No more, one day here, one day there. Working places, everything is back to normal. We still keep this what we call green passport or green certificate. So, for example, restaurants are open, but if you don't do a takeaway, but you want to sit in the restaurant, you have to show you were vaccinated, because up until now, from those who are eligible over 16 to get vaccines, we have about 85% who got the vaccine, so still 15% which are not. And of course, there is still the issue of children. Now we're approaching the summer, and there are big questions by families. What happened with the kids if we're going abroad? Whether the kids can come with us? What will happen when we come back? So, for example, children who are not vaccinated still need to be, if they're entering the country, or will they enter back to the country in the summer, they will still need to be in quarantine of 14 days. So children are still, in a way, in a question mark. So it's not, like you said, it's not virus-free, because we still have Israel is a relatively young country. So out of 9 million people, we have roughly 3 million which are under 16. So among these, it's still not relevant for them to get vaccines. So I don't think before we will be able to vaccine them to call it a real virus-free, but on practical matters, yeah, where life is back in Israel.
The thing is that the life which is coming to us, it's going to be somehow who is vaccinated and who is not. And who is not vaccinated is going to be excluded for certain things. There are going to be some barriers that you cannot do it, or you cannot travel, or you cannot enter the hotel if you are not vaccinated. Do you think it's possible? Is this time coming? What do you think?
In point of view if you're talking about Israel, that question is not something that we are discussing about. I think there are massive numbers of people who got the vaccine, so this is not, in this time, it's not something that we mention. It's not possible.
Look, I think it should definitely not be used as a measure of punishment to people. it's good to use it, and I think it was used in the beginning in Israel as an incentive for people to go and get vaccines. But when you get to numbers like in Israel, so I'm not sure that we are really in what they call this herd immunity already, but we are in good numbers. And you can see, we open up the entire country, and you don't see the numbers growing like we saw in the past, which means the vaccines are working. And by the way, we see like almost every week now new research coming from Israel, which are, again, because we were kind of the best lab for Pfizer at least, so we have the best results of research. So I saw just the other day a kind of a research on more than 1.5 million people in one of these health insurance companies in Israel. Amazing result, even better than what they expected or published in the beginning. 97-98% success a week after you get the second dose, which means, again, 98% of those who are vaccinated twice are corona-free. But for the long run, look, I think this pandemic showed us that we are not only one nation, we are one world. You know, we have to take responsibility for each other, and I guess for the coming future, there's no other way. I mean, we have to allow ourselves. Each and every one of us is responsible not only for himself, but for his, for his community, for his country, and for the whole world. And I believe in countries, in regions like Europe, for example, they will have to make some definition between those who are vaccinated and those who are not, at least until the numbers will grow dramatically like they are now in Israel.
Did you know anybody who was sick from your friends or somebody in Israel?
Actually, from our family members, we don't know someone that was sick. But I just want to add one more point. There was also a research that I've read about pregnant women, that there was a question about that in the beginning, if to vaccinated pregnant women, and right now what they see is they decided to give a vaccine to a pregnant women in any stage of pregnancy, and they find out that it's not harming the pregnancy. So this is also a good thing that shows that those vaccines are safe.
Do you think we are going to get out of all this soon, completely?
Again, I think the example of Israel is a good example that it's possible. We are practically out. Again, of course, the doctors, that's their job, will still keeping us alert and concerned, saying we should still keep, in Israel just last week, I think, we were allowed to not wear masks in the public spaces or in the open air. In closed doors, you still need the masks, but outside you're allowed not to in Israel. The vaccines is the best way out. Now, of course, we are not doctors here. We are not the ones who should tell people go or don't go. But if you check the results from Israel, and for me this is the most important example, because I was asked many times here in Serbia, what was the success story of Israel? So there were different factors why it was so efficient and successful and so quick in Israel. Again, some of them may be unique to us, are not applicable in other countries. The results, I think, are the ones that should encourage everyone to go and get vaccines. 95-96% success. I think we get less than that in flu every winter, and we still go and take the the vaccines against flu. So and not to mention the what we all see in the results if you don't get it. I mean, it's a real serious disease. It's not a joke. Not a joke, not only for elderly people, but also for, nowadays we see also for much younger people. So, of course, I think we are on the way out. I think Serbia is on the way out. I think with the number of vaccinated people in Serbia. I hope Serbia will be the first country or second in Europe to follow Israel and be out of it. It's good for the economy, it's good for tourism, it's good for people, for their, people are, again, that's what we saw in Israel. People were so keen on going back to life. It's 1 year that you're not really live as we all, all of a sudden, almost by night, life as we knew them stopped. Now they're coming back and it's great.
I think the atmosphere in Israel right now, it's an atmosphere of optimistic. You see people smiling, you see people planning, they're traveling, things that they couldn't think about few months ago. Suddenly they have plans for future. So you really see the light in the end of the corridor.
I think one of the things you talked before about the commonalities between us, Serbs and Israelis, and I think one of the things that we are very family people. We like our large families, and one of the things that was very difficult for us in Israel, again, I'm sure for everyone, is not to see your parents, not allowed to see your grandparents, and this is a big part of this coming back to life, that you can really get back to routine, to visit your elderly members of the family, for grandchildren to meet their grandparents. That's, in Israel, it's a very important way of life, and again, I think the same in Serbia.
You didn't mention that, in fact, in Israel you have been very strict with the instructions. When the state gave the instructions in Israel, they have been very strict.
We have tried, again, I agree with what you said in the beginning. Again, one of the commonalities, both Serbs and Israelis, we are not the most disciplined people on the globe. So it was always a combination between good PR by the government, do it because it's right, because it's important, because it will save your lives, and then of course from time to time also enforcement. We had to use police here and there to tell people, to fine people if they are disobeying to the rules. But again, it happened. I think in most cases I can say yes, we were able through these two measures of one, explaining to people why it's important, but if not also to force them to do it. We were quite successful in Israel, not all the times, not with all the people. There was different communities who were, not all of them obeyed in the same way. But all in all, I think, if I had to give a mark to the Israeli public, I think people were quite, I think even we surprised ourselves in many ways that we were doing it in the right way.
Now, as a professional, when you have a very sensitive thing in your hand, a very sensitive fact, something which is not very pleasant, what can make people scared, making people insecure, would you give a truth or you would make the truth mild? How would you put a sensitive thing? How, as a professional?
I think in the experience of the whole world within a bit more than a year, or let's say 15 months of pandemic, for me, I think the most important thing of any government was to create trust with the people. Once there was no trust between the government and the people, so people start thinking, well, the instructions we get are not coming from the right incentives. They are having some different, in Israel, we went through the pandemic together with political instability, election campaign. People sometimes had questions whether the government is really telling the truth. So I think there is no other option than telling the truth. I think this is the most important, even if sometimes it's difficult, it's not popular. I think once you break this trust, that's the key for success or for failure. So I'm sure that every government must really build and keep this trust, because this is the most important factor to be able to really maintain this, what we talked about, discipline of the people.
Thank you so much for this lovely coffee, and thank you very much for having me. It was very useful to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and again, I really hope that to see much better success. I mean, again, Serbia, I think, is very much going on the right track. I hope people will less and less be hesitant and come and get the vaccines, because that's the best way out.
כמה כוכבים